Here we go.
Good now?
Believe so.
All right, ready to get going?
Yep.
All right. Okay, so first question is, what do you know already? I remember I asked you this and you said you know how the pieces move. Have you do you have a chess.com account? Have you ever played before or just
Nope.
watched stuff? Okay.
I've,
All
I've,
right,
I
well
mean,
for
I've played chess with friends here and there, like on a board, but
okay.
yeah.
Okay. Do you know checkmate and castling already?
Yes. Remind me about castling.
So castling's a special king move where if the path between a king and a rook is clear, you can castle. So for example, once this knight and bishop are out of the way, your king's normally only allowed to go one square, but castling, he's allowed to jump two, and it'll look like this. He just jumps two, and the rook jumps over him. Special
Oh,
move that's a one-time thing. You can do it on the other side too, as long as it's clear. Say something like this. And as soon as the path is clear between the king and the king can jump two squares, and the rook will just land next to him. You
okay.
can only do that once per game, though. And there's rules that each piece has to be in their starting position for you to be able to castle. So if you move your king back and forth, say, even though it's on the starting square, it's not going to let you castle since the king has moved already. The king has to have not moved at all in the game. And same thing goes for the rooks. If the rook is already moved, it's not going to let you do this castle move either. If you've moved one rook, but not the other, you can still legally castle the other way. It just has to be the king and the rook have to be in their starting positions, and they haven't moved yet.
Okay. That makes sense.
Okay. Um, okay. Are you familiar with chess notation? Like just the letters and the numbers, how the grid works?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think
Whenever
so.
beginners starting with chess, I mean it's just a normal grid. It's like Battleship or any normal grid. There's some like weird chess notation if you're actually writing down the moves, but as long as you can understand what squares I'm talking about, we're good.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. So when you're a beginner at chess, there's three major beginner rules that you learn first. The first one is that the center of the board is the most important thing. These four squares comprise the center, and that's where most of the action will be taking place for a few different reasons. But the number one rule is that most of your pieces should be gathering towards the center. Your two center pawns are going to be your strongest pawns compared to the ones on the side of the board. And all your pieces will generally be stronger the closer they get to the center. So there's some natural squares that your pieces will want to go. For example, these knights, at the start of the game, they only get two options. The one towards the center is always going to be stronger. And especially with knights, it's pretty pronounced because when you bring this knight towards the center, his good square, he immediately just takes control of eight squares around him in this little circle. If you put him off to the side, though, you're cutting that power in half, and he only gets four right away. Same thing for the bishops. The closer they are to the center of the board in general, the stronger they'll be because they're not getting cut off by the edge of the board as much if they're too close to the edge. Um, the second rule after the center is developing your pieces. A lot of beginners get stuck in the idea of they like playing with their queen or they like moving a bunch of pawns forward to advance their line a bit. But what should really happen ideally is you take a little bit of control of the center. Your most common moves will be just starting with one of the pawns going to the middle. And then after that, your job immediately is to get everybody else in the game. Once you have that pawn giving you a foothold in the center, you just start bringing everybody else. So the knights will start coming out, chips will start coming out, and everybody just kind of gravitates towards the center as long as the squares are safe. But this is a pretty typical looking position after the opening, where both players have gotten some pawns just sitting in the center to make sure that the opponent doesn't take it over by themselves. And then all of these knights and bishops get into the center as close as they can on the safest squares they can find. This makes sense so far?
Yeah, yep. Yeah, so
And then the last thing is just you want to make sure you castle your king. usually a pretty high value move. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I'm just gonna let you keep talking.
Okay. Castling is usually a pretty high value move just because with most of your battling going on in the center, your king doesn't want to be anywhere near that. He just wants to be tucked away safely somewhere else from where the fighting's going on, especially if things are starting to open up in the middle of the board. The one thing you don't want is there's open lines happening in the center of the board and your king's right in the middle of them. So generally, you castle pretty early before the board gets blown open just to make sure he stays safe.
Right. Right.
Um, all right, let me show you. Let me grab a game real quick. I'm going to show you an instructive game that's a pretty simple one, but one player does his developing and castling and controlling the center a lot better than the other player does. And it leads to the second player getting in a lot of trouble because he wasn't following principles very well and just overall not making the strongest moves that he could be. All right. We'll be following white in this game. So if you have any questions on any of these moves, go ahead and ask. But we'll go through each move one by one and slowly and explain the thought process behind each one.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. So in this game, white starts off with e4. This is like a classic just center move. There's multiple pawns that can touch the center. So you'll see and hear a few different openings the more familiar you get with chess. Every opening has a name. But in general, the three pawns that'll move forward for white usually on turn one is going to be one of these guys that can touch the center easily. It does a lot of good things right away. It grabs some important squares from your opponent. It opens up some pieces behind you. Your bishop and queen get open lines and you're starting to pave the way to grab the center. So if your opponent doesn't really respond well and does something poorly, you can just start running down the board and taking over squares that weren't really supposed to belong to you if he's not defending them very well.
Right.
As opposed to
The
like if you
the
move a piece on the side, nothing good happens.
the pawn like at C, I think it was like C2, for example,
Mm-hmm.
like a bit more of a advantageous piece to move than a pawn in F2, just because
Oh
it's like
yeah,
closer to the king, right?
yeah, exactly. We exclude this F pawn just because this is one of the weakest diagonals on the board for you.
Right, right,
The fastest checkmate in the game is the two move checkmate, and it only works if you open that diagonal poorly because the queen gets to jump in and start giving you trouble on this diagonal.
right.
Generally, you don't want to move the F pawn unless you're very sure that this isn't going to become a problem for you. So if you're already castled, for example, sometimes the F pawn can start moving forward. But generally, in the opening, you don't want to open up that possibility for black to get to your king. And same thing on the other side. Black usually won't move this pawn either. So yeah, usually these three, and the F pawn's just excluded because it opens your king. All
Okay,
right, so
that
this
makes
guy
sense. Yeah.
starts with e4. Black goes ahead and matches, does the same thing. White moves on to step two after this, just getting the rest of the pieces out. If there was opportunity to take more control of the center with pawns, usually you would. Like if black plays a weaker move that doesn't really have anything to do with the center at all, you'll just go ahead and grab all of the space for free. And that's usually why black will try to contest you on move one. E5 or C5 are two of the most common moves for black in response to this, just to make sure you don't start running them over right away.
Right.
White goes ahead and just starts bringing out the rest of the pieces. Knight f3 makes a threat. Black goes ahead and defends. Brings out one of his pieces, keeps the center strong. And white plays bishop c4. So far, all these rules we were talking about were being followed. Both players are just grabbing the center, developing their minor pieces, and getting themselves ready to castle. Again, black just goes ahead and matches, kind of following the same game plan that white is.
Right.
And here's the first little deviation and your first question. Normally, if we were just following normal game rules here, we would get our pieces out, we would castle quickly. So castling would be a move that would make sense here. Or if we're not going to do that, we would start to get some of these other pieces out that aren't really doing anything, like hopping this knight forward, something like that. In this game, white went ahead and played pawn c3. Why do you think this is?
Uh, I mean, I guess mm, several things to consider. I don't know. Being able to get the queen out seems reasonable.
Yeah, that's something. We open up a line for our queen. Sure.
Yeah. I mean, the also like mildly disincentivizes the knight from moving forward.
Yeah, that's true. You're taking up some important squares. That's
Yeah.
good.
Um, and then I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something obvious.
No, you're not. That's good. I'm just seeing how much you see without any assistance to start.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
no, that's good. Okay. And then one other important thing I always tell beginners is, especially when you're looking at higher level games or in your own matches, you always want to think when somebody makes a move, are there any negatives to it? Because beginners tend to look a lot at the good things, like opening your queen or disincentivizing the knight, but they're not really looking at the negatives that it brings to the position. So is there anything bad about this C3 move that you notice?
Um, yeah. I mean, takes up a square from the knight.
Yep, that's the major one. You got it.
Okay.
Yeah, this just blocks one of the main squares for the knight. And you can, if you're playing against this guy, say you're black here, you can extrapolate a bit of information off of stuff like that because you can say this guy blocked his knight. Either he's just making a huge mistake or he has an alternate plan for this knight. And then you can kind of think, all right, well, if he's not putting the knight there, where's it going to go? And start looking at these other squares, seeing if there's anything to take from there. But yeah, C3, all the things you said are good. It opens the queen, it takes up some squares from the knight. One of the main ideas with this move, it's a pretty common thing in a situation like this where there's a lot of just raw power in the center for both sides since everybody's kind of dragged all of their forces there so far. If you look at this d4 square specifically right now, um, Black's got these three attackers involved in controlling that square, whereas we only have one. So C3 not only stops them from being able to use that square any further, but it's also starting to add more forces into that fight for us. So after C3, we're going to have these two. And then this also gives us the opportunity to play D4 if we want to next turn, because we'll have the backup needed. We'll have this pawn, we'll have our queen, and we'll have our knight. So this will be a 3 versus 3 all of a sudden after we do this. One easy rule to remember, because usually when you're first starting, it's hard to, like, for example, if we play d4, you kind of have to calculate if he takes me and I take him and he takes me and I take him and he takes me and I take him, who wins that fight. And it's pretty hard to visualize all that in your head. So general rule is if it's even numbers, the defending side will always win. So if you're the one getting taken first, even numbers win. The defender will win when we're even, so I can play it out for you. But he's the attacker in this situation. He's making the first attack, and the numbers are even 3 versus 3. But if he ends up going through this whole mess, you're going to end up grabbing the last capture since he was the one who went first, and you're going to win out on this fight. You'll be up a piece in the end. So yeah, this C3 move, the idea is it's supposed to be preparing D4 at some point, and you're going to make this very strong strike in the center where he can't really take you without losing something, and you're going to be grabbing full control of the middle of the board. Black here went ahead and reacted to that. He didn't do a very good job of it. The correct reaction to this opening, if you ever see it again, is he's supposed to hit you somewhere else. You're preparing this really strong force on D4, and there's not any great way for him to add really any more power to this. He's already maxed out on the power he's going to bring. So whenever that's the case, if you can't bring any more resources there, you usually just hit them somewhere else while everybody's busy looking over there. Black's supposed to just play knight f6 here. And the idea is that you're going to start winning over on that d4 square. But because of that, and because your knight has not come out where he's supposed to, this e4 square has gotten a little bit weak. He doesn't have that knight support. Everybody's focusing on d4. So Black usually just says, all right, you can have d4, and I'm going to focus my attention on the weaker square.
Okay.
In this game, Black played queen e7. What do you think he's trying to do here?
I mean, very level one, just protecting the king a bit.
Yeah, sure.
Um, I mean, uh,
So keeping in mind that the immediate thing on the board, once we see c3, black knows that white's going to try to play d4 next turn. So in relation to d4, how does this move from black really help with that battle that's about to happen at all?
I mean, um, wait, maybe I'm missing. So you said typically like standard move would be like D2 to D4.
Right.
Um,
Usually what happens is
is it something to do with like uh that no, that doesn't make sense. Okay, I'm gonna let you explain it.
Sure. So usually what happens is in chess, one player is going to make a threat, the other person's going to react in some way, and then we'll continue from there. So when c3 is played, nothing's under attack yet. Black's not in any danger. But the kind of threat that's being thrown on the table is white saying, if you don't do something about this, I'm going to go grab the center, and you're not going to be able to stop me. So
Right, right,
basically, black has one move of time to answer this threat that's on the table. Otherwise, that's going to come through, and black's not going to love it. So usually knight f6 is the way to go. This is a kind of indirect reaction because it's not really attacking the d4 square at all when he does it, but it is still a reaction that you're putting like a counter threat on the table. So white's going to do their thing, but you're making a threat of your own, so it'll kind of even out. When black plays queen e7, it's kind of the same idea. He's not really directly impacting d4 at all. His idea is that if d4 is played, he's going to have a counter threat somewhere else.
right,
So
right.
this is a little
It's
tough.
just like it's just a maneuver to like get the queen into like a more versatile position.
Right. And he is shutting down d4 here. The idea is that if white goes ahead and just makes this challenge move that he was going to make, black can go ahead and take it one time.
Right, right.
And then when white takes back, we know he can't take back again because that's a losing fight. The defenders will win. His idea is that the queen's open now to just come in and start wrecking shit. He's going to go after the king. He's going to add another attacker to
I
d4.
see. I
And
see.
black's
Okay.
going to win out on this now. So this is kind of like the indirect reaction. He's basically telling white, I see your threat. I'm countering it. If you continue to make this threat, you're going to lose out now because of this second threat that I've put on the table. So now that chain will continue where white made the threat, black made the counter threat, and white's going to try to deal with that threat that black has made. So it's a very back and forth, just long chain usually. And if somebody fucks this chain up on their end, they're the ones who are going to lose out. If they leave a threat unanswered, or if their counter threat doesn't work as well as they think it will, the other side's going to win. So your job in chess mostly is to keep everything as solid as you can and pay very close attention to what threats are being put on the table. It's easier said than done because what happens in a lot of beginner games is a threat gets made, one player just doesn't see it, and a piece just gets taken in a really dumb manner just because it wasn't noticed. But your job is kind of to develop your pieces, keep a strong position, and pay attention to the threats your opponent's making until some of your threats get through or somebody makes a mistake, and that's when things start happening. All right, so here black plays queen e7. He's countering with this queen takes e4 idea if lines get opened up.
Right.
White goes ahead and answers this just by castling. So again, this is just another direct answer. He's saying, I'm ready to play d4 now because your queen taking my pawn won't be a check anymore. It's not as dangerous once my king's out of the way. And if you send your queen in here, it's going to be a bit dangerous for you with all these pieces ready to come attack you all of a sudden. Now that the king's not there anymore, this doesn't place as much of a danger. So now it's back on black, where this threat is active again, and black's going to have to try to do something about it. In the game, black kind of surrendered here. He couldn't really find a great way to stop this d4 stuff. So he said, I'm just going to continue developing. You can play d4 if you want to. I'm just going to continue strengthening my position. So he just plays d6, connecting this pawn chain, making these guys strong. and then also opening up this bishop ready to get into the game.
Okay.
White went ahead and made good on his threat. Now that nothing's stopping him, he grabs the center for himself. And black has a few choices here. So before we go any further, let me now that we're heating up with the threats a little bit, I'll start asking you more questions. What are black's choices here? Now that white has made this move, what's the most immediate threat that black has to deal with?
Well, just the, I mean, the both the pawn and the bishop being exposed,
Yeah,
right?
pawn and bishop are under attack, and which one needs the help more immediately?
I would say, I'd say, well, uh, well, it's just kind of tricky because you have the queen at e7. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I suppose the pawn at e5. Um, well, the uh, the only reason I say that is, see, okay, so let's maybe play this out a couple moves. So like
Sure.
pawn to c5. Like if we take the bishop, we're
Okay.
we're hanging a pawn, right? Um,
Well, hanging would be the wrong word because hanging
oh
is
oh
like
so
we lose it for free. This one, we're still getting something for it. We would lose a pawn, you're right. But if we get a bishop for it, that's okay.
right, okay, I see. Um, hmm. Well, I mean,
Has anyone ever told you the piece values, like the number of points attached to each piece?
no, I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, so there's no score in chess, there's no point system or anything. It's just a metric for situations like this. Like if you have two pieces under attack, you know which one is more valuable.
Right,
Um,
right. Yeah,
in
so
general, pawns are just one, bishops and knights are three, rooks are five, and the queen is nine. And again, there's no score. That's just an order of how important they are, which ones you want to prioritize.
yeah, well, I mean,
Um,
well, yeah, so okay. I kind of see where you're going with this. Yeah, I mean, if we take the pawn at e5, like uh we have that covered by the knight at
right.
f3, so that seems pretty well defended.
Hmm.
So I guess just taking the bishop would be standard.
Yeah. Taking the bishop would definitely be standard solely just because it's worth more. Um, if you ever have a choice between two pieces, unless there's some extenuating circumstance, you're going to take the bigger one.
Right,
So
right.
if you have the choice between a bishop and a pawn, we'll grab the bishop. If you have the choice between a bishop and a knight, it doesn't matter. They're both the same amount of points. So you'll just pick whichever one you think helps your position more. And if you have the choice between like a bishop or a rook, we'll grab the rook. We'll always just take the bigger one. Um, Points aside, you do want to think about attackers versus defenders a little bit. So you were talking a bit about if I take this, we're going to get taken back. And that's true. And if we take on e5, we're going to have more protection, which is also true. But those can get a little irrelevant because, like you said, we lose a pawn, but we gain a bishop. That's a good trade for us. And on e5, we do have protection from the knight, but we're also being attacked by three guys at the same time. So even though he'd be protected a little bit, it still wouldn't be enough to overpower what black's going on here. But yeah, you're right. The bishop is the main threat. If we don't do something about it, white's going to get a piece for just a pawn, and we don't really want this. So put yourself in black's shoes now. You have this threat on the board. Your bishop's about to be taken. You also have this pawn under attack, but it doesn't actually need very much help because you have three protectors ready to go. If white takes your pawn, we're going to very easily just be able to take theirs back with somebody, and it'll just be a fair trade pawn for pawn.
Right.
So even though it looks like it's under attack, not something we have to worry about. We really just have to worry about that bishop. So what are black's options here to keep that bishop safe?
Um, hmm. Uh, let's see. I'm just kind of looking at all the different pieces here.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, so you mean keep it safe as in,
As in,
uh,
don't lose anything for free,
I see.
or don't take a bad trade. If it's a fair trade, that's fine. Just don't make a bad trade here.
So you're saying like white moves first. What would be like if we take the bishop, like if white
Well,
takes the bishop.
Black's turn right now because white just played
Oh, I
d4.
see. I see. So maybe like uh well, damn. I know it's probably staring me right in the face.
Okay,
I mean I
everything's new
was
right now.
yeah I mean pawn to d5 seems okay.
Down here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an idea. So this would be like a counter threat. It's like an indirect answer. We didn't actually stop him from taking our bishop, but
Well,
we
that
go
yeah, I
attack
mean,
theirs. So
yeah, that was my only thought.
yeah, that's a good idea in general. This would be a counter attack. The only problem is it doesn't really work here because it doesn't fully solve our problem. When we do this, if they take us and we take back, sure, that looks fine. But if they just take our pawn, for example, we just lost a pawn and we didn't actually deal with the threat. It's still there. So
Right,
we
right.
just kind of gave him a pawn, but we didn't fix things. If he did take us, though, that would work.
I see. Okay. Um, it like bishop to e6 or something.
Another counter attack, but same issue. Because if we play bishop e6,
Yeah, it's the same
they'll take
thing. It's the
us
same
and then
thing.
they'll just
Yeah.
grab. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Um, yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
All right. So there are two moves here that you could try. You've got the direct answer where this guy's attacking you. So just get rid of him. We can just take, and that'll eliminate the threat, at least for now. It'll probably get renewed next turn after they take, but that's fine. It's a temporary answer. The second thing you could do is just move the bishop away. You don't have that many options. You've only got 3 squares right now, and 2 of them won't be safe because they'd be moving into another pawn. So you
Right. Okay.
could take, or you could just drop back, go back to b6, and up here you'll be safe.
Yeah, I was just kind of like stuck in that fundamental of like trying to keep pieces close to the center of the board.
Yeah, that's fair. Generally, you don't want to move pieces backwards, but you can kind of think of it as those are your fundamental rules to live by. But any direct attack is going to take precedence over those. So if your queen is under attack, for example, and you only have 1 square, and the square looks pretty shitty, but it's the only safe one, you're still going to do it just because preserving your queen is way more important than following those fundamentals at the moment. So any direct attack will take priority over those rules, and you'll try to rectify it later. So yeah, our bishop will go to kind of a shitty square now, but what we'll do is we'll try to fix that later and get him into a better spot by making some trades in the center, maybe, or rerouting him somewhere else later in the game. We just want to make sure that everything stays safe, and then we'll get them to their good positions as soon as we can. In this case, he's still not too bad. I mean, he still has a direct line to the center, so he's not exactly in it anymore, but he's still eyeing it. He's still putting pressure on the center. So it's not like this is a horrible square for him. It's much worse when a knight gets kicked away. For example, if white pushes this pawn and kicks that knight out, he's going to have an actual issue. For bishops, they can just step back and still be seeing the center. Knights don't really get to do that. No matter which square this knight chooses, he's going to be pretty far removed from everything. So bishops are usually okay. Knights don't love it. Okay, in this game, black went ahead and played bishop b6, which is it's a small mistake. This was the first big mistake of the game for black. Um, Kind of what you were talking about. He's playing a little bit too passively. He's kind of letting white do what he wants with the position. What he should have done is start answer back a little more aggressively and say, I'm not just going to give you the center for free. We're going to fight over it, and start making these trades in the middle and trying to fight back a little. but he kind of just rolls over here, plays pretty passively, and white gets control of the position at this point. He's got the stronger center. His pawns can push into the position when they want to. White's got a little bit more control here. Okay, next, white went ahead and played a4. This one doesn't follow your fundamental rules at all. This was kind of an exploit for white, I guess. Usually, and this is totally fine to do, you would just continue developing your pieces here, just getting your rook in the game, getting your bishop out, getting your knight out, something like this. This a4 move is just a pure exploit because black has done some dumb stuff with putting his pieces into weird spots. So white's playing this a4 move here to grab space on the queen side a little bit, and maybe later thinking about trying to trap that bishop since he's gotten so stuck back there. So this one was just, I'm going to grab some space, and I'm going to posture that I might go after that weak piece that you made. Black went ahead and responded to this just by making a little escape square for his bishop. White went forward. Black went back. And I think we'll stop with this game from there. This was mostly what I wanted to show you. I wanted to show you a bit of the center control and where these pieces are going. And the most important thing from this one is just this kind of threat response. So one player made a threat. This was the most important part, I would say. All the way back here, when white played c3, and immediately you start thinking, what's he doing next? What kind of attacks could come in? Black evaluates the situation, says, okay, I see there's this threat coming. Let me go ahead and respond. So he did this response. White then saw that and responded to that by getting his king out of there. And this game just kind of continued like that, where one player did something, the other player responded, and then just a bunch of reactions. And what happened in this game was, in the final position, black fell behind a little bit out of this opening because his reactions weren't ideal. His reactions to white's threats were generally kind of passive. They were kind of indirect. He wasn't really challenging white too much. So we can stop here in this position, but white has some extra space here. He's got pawns entering black's position. All of his pieces are in their favorite spots. White's castled, whereas on black's side, black's bishop definitely does not want to be here usually. He's gotten pushed all over the board. He's had to move 3 times. This queen has come out a little bit. Black has not been able to castle. There's some dead pieces sitting in the back. This knight doesn't really have any vision. He's just kind of stuck. So white just gets an advantage here just based off of making threats and his opponent not defending all that well. All right. This stuff makes sense so far? I know we're going fast.
Yeah. Makes sense.
All right. We'll do now. Let's get you in a real game situation. So for this, I'll hold commentary unless you ask. If you ask or have a question about something, I'll answer you. But otherwise, I'll have you play on your own. And we'll also practice just the notation and stuff so you can familiarize yourself with everything. So you'll play white in this one. When you're ready, tell me what you want to move and where, and I'll play against you as black.
Okay, maybe like pawn to d4. Pawn to... Okay, what do you think about... Well, maybe pawn to e3? Oh god, chess is hard.
It definitely is at first. Pawn e3 is definitely not bad. It gives you some support for the center.
Yeah.
Just remember to think about any negatives you notice too.
Yeah, it just like exposes the king so early.
That's not necessarily too bad because if you think about exposing the king, there's like one line they could get to you on.
Yeah, it's going to take a lot of moves to get there anyhow.
Yeah, it's also different than the F side because if somebody checks you over here, say the queen or the bishop eventually gets over here, you've got so many people ready to help you. The pawn can block, the knight can block, the bishop can block, the queen can block. It's not like the other side where there's not really anybody over there. This side is more okay just because you can block it really easily. So you never have to worry too much about that.
Okay.
The one negative to e3 I was talking about is that your dark squared bishop will have a little bit of trouble getting into the game because he's going to be locked in behind that pawn.
Right, right.
So when you're making any moves in the opening, you're just kind of trying to think and visualize how are mostly these four guys, how are your knights and
Yeah.
bishops going to reach their squares without getting in each other's way?
Okay. What about like knight to f3?
Yeah, that's definitely good. That'll
Okay.
never be bad.
Right. And then maybe uh maybe pawn to, well, let me think this out for a second.
Sure.
I mean, there's that. Yeah, maybe pawn to c3.
Okay, and what's your logic there? Why are we doing this?
I mean, short answer, I just don't really know what I'm doing.
That's okay.
It lets it doesn't, well, like, yeah, blocks the knight, which doesn't seem good. Um, just kind of like trying to avoid, making a free trade with like pawn to e4.
Right.
Um, and yeah, like you said, don't want to move like pawn to e3, just blocking the bishop. Um,
That's good.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah. So you're doing a good job, at least in your thought process, because you're thinking about what move can I make that's not really going to have any negatives to it. You're definitely right that we don't want to play e4. That's under black's control. You can kind of keep a mental picture in your head as you get more experienced. As pieces move, certain squares will become non-available to you anymore, like this e4 square.
right,
And same thing for the other side. Like e5 is never going to be a thing for him because that's firmly under our control.
right,
As
yeah,
far as how to get your pieces out without blocking anything, the answer usually is just don't move too many pawns. The purpose of your pawns mostly is to gain yourself a foothold that can't be removed. So, like when we shove this in the center, we're immediately stopping black from pushing in any further. And we're also stopping his e pawns and c pawns from coming any further. So, just this guy being there alone has given us a pretty strong, like 3 square grip in the middle. So we don't actually have to give him any more support. We don't really have to think about moving any more pawns just yet. If he starts getting under pressure, like if this pawn comes down and has some attackers going, then maybe we want to think about a move like c3 or e3 to help him out. But for
right,
now, he's totally fine just chilling in there by
yeah.
himself. So
Maybe, yeah, maybe something like bishop to f4.
yeah, that's good.
Okay.
All right, let's do sure.
Yeah, okay. Um, and then yeah, and then maybe pawn to e3.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Yeah. Now that this guy is out, we're totally fine to make that chain and
Right.
open up the light squared bishop. That's good.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
Okay, yeah. Uh, and then uh, knight to c3.
Sure. That's good.
Okay, okay. This is, yeah. Okay, this is getting fun. Okay.
Yes. Now there's action. That's good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, it's gonna take some time to get better with like the visualizations.
Mm-hmm.
But okay.
So as you're going through this one, let me hear your thought process. As soon as you see this threat, what's the first thing you start doing?
What do you mean? Like in my
Um.
head?
Yeah.
I mean, just getting a general feel for like uh, the strength of our defense at the moment.
That's
Um,
good.
yeah, so the like pawn to e4 doesn't seem like it accomplishes that much. Um, well, I don't know. I mean, bishop takes pawn, knight takes bishop, pawn takes knight. Still doesn't seem good.
Right. So some you can just throw out based on sheer number because this one they've got 3 people already looking there, and we've only
Right.
got one potential guy to help. So yeah, we
Yeah,
can throw that one
exactly.
out just on sheer number.
Okay, yeah, yeah. That's gonna be a skill. I, I mean, a lot of these are
Yeah.
elementary skills. It's just getting warmed up.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
It'll take time.
yeah, for sure. Ooh, maybe like queen to e2.
We could do that. Why are you looking at that?
Um, I don't have a great reason. It's just I'm not totally convinced of any other move. It doesn't really seem like it has any negatives. Probably like some more potential protection. Um,
There. Okay.
but yeah, I mean I'm just not like too convinced of. I mean maybe something like pawn to g4 or something, but even that doesn't seem
Right.
great.
Okay. Okay. So you're gonna have 2 mental processes you're gonna go through most of the time. The first one is going to be when everything is safe. So there's no threat to respond to, nothing's really going on. You have a free move to do whatever you want. That's going to be your first process. And you're going to think of it in a way okay, I have this free time. How can I improve my position? And the way you'll do that is usually looking at your pieces, taking stock of what you've got right now, thinking who have you not really activated yet, who could be better, who needs help, stuff like that. So in this position, for example, you've already gotten your knights to good spots. Your dark squared bishop has been stabilized. You've got this nice control of the center with the pawns. But there are some people who have been left out so far. Your light squared bishop hasn't been activated. Your rooks are still sitting in their starting spots. Your king has not been able to castle yet. And your queen is still in her starting space.
Yeah,
So
I
if
mean
there was nothing
maybe
going on, you would go to these guys.
okay, yeah, maybe like getting the bishop out
Mm-hmm.
could be good. Like yeah, bishop to d3 or something.
Yeah, that would be perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's how you would do it. If there was nothing going on, you would just think, what have I not done yet? What still needs to improve? Who can I make better? And here we can say, yeah, the bishop hasn't done anything, so bishop d3 makes a lot of sense. As far as the other moves you were looking at, queen e2 does make sense in some ways because it's activating the queen, it's opening up the way to castle, clearing the route.
Right.
There is a negative though that you block your bishop, so he would be stuck behind the queen for a little bit. So if you were
Yeah.
gonna move the queen, it would probably be like d2 instead, just to keep that line open. But that would be an okay move. The e4 and g4 ones you have to be careful about because again, those are like squares that are not under your control. You'll gain this with time where you just kind of instinctively know those are not yours anymore.
Right.
But these are controlled by black right now. So without extra help, we're not going to be able to play either of those moves until we get some more power of our own on those squares. The second process is when there is something going on. So this is when your opponent has made a move and they've threatened something of yours. Either they're attacking a piece or they're checking you or they're preparing to do something that you don't want to happen. So for example, when I play bishop d6, this is the first move we've had so far that introduces a direct threat to one of your pieces. I can take your bishop if you do nothing. So in this case, when there's a threat on the board, the first thing you need to ask yourself is, do I care? Because some threats don't matter. If you're defended enough, it doesn't really matter if they take your piece because you'll have enough support to handle it anyway. If you do care, then you have to start thinking about, okay, I don't want this to happen. How can I prepare for this or how can I stop it? So first question here is, do you care if I take your bishop next turn? Let's say you just played like bishop d3 like we planned, and I take your bishop. Is that a big problem for you?
Wait, repeat the question.
So when I play bishop d6, I do attack your piece. The
Right.
first question is, do you care that much about that? Can you just ignore me and do what you wanted to do anyway? And if I take your bishop, is that a problem for you, or do you not really care?
Uh, I mean, well, doesn't we have like the pawns at like e3 and f2 seem okay to like with some immediate defense to some really important pieces, so it doesn't seem like that big of a threat.
Right. You're right. This would be a fair trade. If I take your bishop, you'll just be able to take it back right away, and it would just be bishop for bishop.
Yeah.
The only question would be the points would be equal. We both get the same amount of points, but we would have to ask, do we like what the position looks like after? So let's say we made one of those moves like queen d2. I take, and you take back. So you would have to kind of picture in your head, my pawns used to look like this nice pawn chain, and now they're a little bit fragmented. So they're a little bit weaker than they were before. But they are still fairly strong. The queen is offering support to them. They're still in the center of the board. So this is all reasonably fine. We don't have too much to worry about here. The habit that you do have to get into, though, in this case, it doesn't matter too much because you're protected. But there's a lot of times where you won't be. So if an attack happens, the worst thing you can do is miss it and just not see it at all, and they just take something for free. So if your pawn wasn't here, this would be a major threat. But since we've got this guy, it's not too bad.
Right.
If you don't love that situation, like say you don't like that trade, you would go to step 2 of that where you'd be like, okay, I do care. I don't want this to happen. I could take your bishop first. I could move away somewhere else. I could dump my knight in there to block you. I could move my bishop to a square where I won't have to break this nice pawn chain if you take me, something like this. So you have options usually. The process is always going to be identify the threat, figure out if it's an issue, and then if it is an issue, find a way to react to it, either by just moving, putting something in the way, just whatever you can find. All right, so with all that said, this move got played. I am attacking your piece. It's not that big a problem if it gets taken. So what do you want to do here?
With the like white to move.
Yep, your turn. And there is no right answer here. There's
Okay.
a
Okay.
lot of
Yeah. I
missions.
mean, let's see that that. Hmm.
And a lot of the time what happens with beginners is whenever it's their turn and they're not sure what to do, they kind of go into overdrive and start looking at every single move. Like they'll just look at random stuff on edges of the board. So if you feel yourself getting too out of control with looking at too much stuff, stick to your fundamentals of getting your pieces in the game, getting to the center. So like these guys, for example, getting castled, but you can kind of ignore all the other noise. Like we don't have to think about G4 or A4 or E4 type stuff. We just want to focus on the basics, the moves that we know will be fairly strong.
Right. Right. Okay. Um. Yeah. I mean, queen to d2 seems reasonable. Only because I don't have a strong conviction on other moves. Like, uh, I mean, I just because we're at like a piece disadvantage towards the middle of the board, like taking a more aggressive strategy doesn't seem great. Like moving some piece to like you know e e5 or e4 or something doesn't seem amazing.
That's true, yeah. Yeah, queen d2 is totally good. Um, there's like situations where, well, not just situations actually, just in general, you can kind of come up with multiple problems in your position. So if I were sitting here in this position, I'd be thinking to myself, my position's pretty nice. The center's under control for the most part. Nothing's really in danger. I still need to castle my king. I still need to develop my bishop. I still need to get my queen in the game. So that gives you moves that you were saying before, like bishop d3 makes a lot of sense. Bishop e2 is fine. Queen
Yeah,
d2 is fine.
I
All of these
mean,
moves are
yeah,
reasonable.
my initial thought was maybe um, queen to d3, but I'm not sure if that. I mean, I guess yeah. Well, queen to d3 or yeah, bishop to d3 could work, right?
Bishop to d3 is good. Queen d3 would be really bad. Do you know why?
Well, yeah, yeah. I mean, we're just giving up the queen for
You're
a
right. Yeah.
bishop. Yeah,
Yeah, it's just not safe. So yeah, we
yeah.
could do the bishop there, but the queen can't. Yeah, bishop d3 is totally fine. Queen d2 is good, and any of these moves are all right. It's just
The
whatever you feel is best.
yeah, the just the fundamental being that the attacking piece we're exposing ourselves up to when we move to d3 would be the bishop. So we don't want to move. We don't want to expose the stronger piece.
Correct. Yeah, if it was a queen sitting on f5, queen d3 would be okay. It's just because it's a smaller piece grabbing a bigger one that we don't want to do that.
Right.
All right, so you said queen d2, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Let's do that. I'll go ahead and castle.
Okay. Yeah, now we can castle, right?
Yep. All right, so we'll castle. Um, all right, I will go here. So this one again is like a direct confrontation move because I am challenging you a little bit now. You have a piece under attack. So we don't care about the points here. You have a million defenders ready to go. It's not going to be anything other than a fair trade, but it is starting to roll into your center a little bit. It's starting to grab some space. So you can think about that a little bit and like, do I want to take this and shut that down? Do I want to let him take me? There's a few options you would have here, but this one I'm just saying is more active than the other moves because there's a direct challenge going on. So you kind of want to think immediately looking around here and seeing if there's anything that concerns you. If not, then you can continue doing whatever you think is best.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of thinking back to what you mentioned about the defender having an advantage in like an even number of moves attack, right?
If there's the same amount of attackers and defenders, yeah, the defender will have the advantage.
Right. Um, well, I mean,
This one
uh,
wouldn't be even though, because you've got a huge majority. I've only got one. You've got like four. So this one you would,
oh, okay. Yeah, no, I think I misapplied the concept.
yeah, that's okay.
So something like the only issue with the bishop, the light square bishop is if I make some move that's good for this piece, it seems like it just blocks a lot of our pieces in.
Could, yeah. Which one are you looking at? D3?
Like yeah, to d3, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you would block off your queen and rook right away. So if he were to stay there permanently, you're right. That wouldn't be that good to block off all your pieces. I don't think he would stay there permanently though, because you do have options to like trade with my bishop and get him out of the way. Or if I trade with you, your queen would be really opened again. So it's only bad if he's going to stay there for a long time. So you
Yeah,
would
I
just
mean
have
it
to ask
is
yourself, is he going to be stuck there forever?
right, right. Okay. Yeah, I mean
And he
definitely I
could.
yeah, I'm just thinking like I don't think like the black light square bishop is going to be like is going to have like a much immediate incentive to take. So that's the only reason
Right.
that seems important to me.
It is. You're right. Yeah, bishop d3. If I take you, you're pretty happy because you just got to trade away a piece that wasn't very good for you for one that's looking right at your king. My
Yeah.
light squared bishop is way stronger right now. So you're right. If you win here, I probably wouldn't have much of incentive to take you. More likely, I would shut that down and either block you by sending the knight in, or I could reroute and move somewhere else. But you're right. I probably wouldn't allow that trade to happen. So that is something to consider if you're going to go there.
I mean, yeah, bishop to d3 seems okay. What about um well, yeah, and then like bishop to d6 doesn't make much sense to me either. Um,
Yeah, that one. Yeah, it
yeah.
could be just a fair trade. You take, my queen takes back. So it would just be a question
Yeah.
of if you think that
It
has
just
any value.
like we weaken our defense and we get the queen like up in the mix. Doesn't seem great.
That's true.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I think I'm gonna call in for help here.
Okay. So one thing I want you to remember as a fundamental rule is that pawns are space grabbers. Most of the role of the pawns is to take up as much space in the enemy position as possible. Because if you get this huge chain of pawns in your opponent's position, you're going to start stealing squares from your opponent. So whenever you notice a pawn creeping into your position, your first thought should be, is that guy going to be a problem running into my position? So for example, this c5 move that I just made, if I take you, it's not going to be a very big issue for you because you're just going to recapture with somebody else. Likely your pawn, you'll just replace that pawn that was taken with another one, and it's not that big a deal. You also want to think what happens if you ignore him, though, because if he comes, say, into c4, could be a little bit annoying for you. Let's say you played something like bishop d3 here, and I play c4. And this pawn suddenly, he's got this nice chain right into your position. It's very, very hard for you to get rid of it easily. And he's taking up spaces that used to belong to you, like this b3 and d3 square. Black has no business owning those because those are way on your side of the board. Those should be yours. So you always want to be wary of pawns getting too far because they just start encroaching on the position and taking up spaces that are supposed to belong to you. So for me here, the first thing I would do in this position is look at this pawn carefully and think about my options. I don't want him to get too far into my position because if he starts creeping down to our king like this, it's going to become a problem later. So the first moves I would look at are how can I stop that from happening? You have a few choices. Immediate ideas to stop c4 would be take, so remove him right away. This would be a fair trade. It would look like this. We take, the bishop takes back, but no other pawn can come forward anymore. The d pawn can't come forward without you just murdering him. The b pawn can't come forward without getting destroyed. So you've kind of removed any possibility of these pawns getting any further. So that one doesn't look too bad. You could play something like b3 to try and support the square, so that if
Yeah,
he comes
that was
in, you
my
can start taking.
that was my next thought.
This would come to the negatives rule though, because there are some big negatives to b3. Do you see any?
Uh, I mean, the bishop's gonna have some sort of line. Well, the bishop at d6 is gonna have some sort of line of attack.
Yeah, you got it. Nice. Yeah, if we play this out in our head and say we play b3, they do c4 anyway, we take them. Yeah, we stop that pawn, but there's just this wasteland around our king now. The bishop can come in, the queen can come in very easily. This is not
Yeah,
really what we were looking for. So yeah, b3 would be one of those that would think about, but we would throw it out just on the fact that there's too many negatives. So
right.
this is kind of how you just bring up and reject ideas. We look at all the possibilities to stop this move we're worried about, and then we just pick the best one. If it were me here, I think I'd probably just take this, make sure it doesn't get any further.
Right.
The only reason you didn't find stuff like this is because you didn't know this was a threat, so that's fine. It's not like it immediately wins the game for black or anything. It's just this is always kind of a power struggle. This is why we fight in the center so much, because we're trying to gain those spaces and take squares under our control. So we don't want to just let him come too far and just take up more area of the board than we have to. So if anybody starts challenging you and is starting to threaten taking up some of your room, you want to find some kind of way to stop them or push back somewhere else. So a common idea, for example, is like if they're going to take up a bunch of space on the queen side, we'll do the same thing on the opposite side since they're focusing their power on the other end. So for example, like something like h3, and if they play c4, we'll do something like g4, and we kind of do the exact same thing to them on the other side and start pushing in their weak spot. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yep.
You still here, Josh?
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, I can now.
Oh, weird. Yeah, I just said yep.
Oh, okay, cool. All right, so here I would definitely recommend taking and just making sure that doesn't go any further. Other than that, though, all the ideas you were saying were fine. Bishop d3 makes a lot of sense. These are things you want to do. Again, though, we're going to follow those fundamental developing rules if there's no other threat going on. This time there is something we're kind of worried about, so we'll put the bishop developing on pause, and we'll just get rid of that stuff first.
Okay.
Okay, let's say you take, I'll take back. Now all those threats are cleared. There's no issue anymore. Like we said, none of these pawns can really push. None of your pieces are under attack. The only thing that I'm looking at is these two pawns, but both of them are very, very heavily defended.
Right.
So there is no issue in your position right now. You have free time to do whatever you think is best. And this is when you would go take stock of your position and think which of my pieces are not doing anything, who can get better, and then just start looking for moves to improve the weakest guys.
Yeah. Yeah, let's see. Interesting idea would be knight to d4.
That could work. What's the idea here that you're looking at?
Just that, well, I mean, improves our position. It's sort of an even trade.
Mm-hmm.
Does I mean it's not a fantastic move. Obviously, it's just uh
Yeah, it's definitely not a bad move. I just wanted to hear your thought
yeah,
process on
yeah.
it.
I mean,
Knight d4 is good.
so yeah. I mean, opens up like getting the pawn out of f2 and
Yeah,
um
that's true.
and then we don't block any important pieces from moving.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, it doesn't seem like a spot that's a slam dunk.
Yeah, that's fine. You can go through
Or
different ideas
or
and weigh each of them. Knight d4 is definitely something that looks fine. You can look for other moves too. If you think it's not a slam dunk move, then you can look for others and see if you like anything else better. But yeah, there's definitely nothing wrong with knight d4.
yeah, I mean, I think pawn to e4 would be just outright bad, right?
Yes, too many
Yeah,
attackers.
right. Um, then I mean, knight to b5 seems pretty useless. Yeah, knight to e4 seems pretty useless. Pawn to well, pawn to g3 maybe.
What's the idea
Or
there?
um, opens up the bishop. Uh, Although probably not for any meaningful route for the bishop, to be honest.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, I mean, yeah. Um,
Yeah,
not to,
G3 is one of those moves you can look at a little bit, but you should throw it out the way you did because, yeah, we opened the bishop, but not to any great route. And also, There's some negatives there that we take squares away from our dark bishop. Our knight will be left unprotected if that pawn
Right.
moves forward. So yeah,
Right.
it's an idea,
Exactly.
but we would toss it.
Yep. Yep. Um. Um. Let's see. In like rook to e1 maybe. Um. Idea being that we have a little more support.
On the e file, the like e4 square and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's possible. All right, so you've definitely come up with some good options. One thing I noticed you haven't said much is these bishop moves, because he's kind of sitting in the back. You were thinking about routing him this way, but you do already still have that route we planned earlier, like bishop d3 or bishop e2. So those are moves that would jump to mind right away, just to get him
Yeah.
into the action.
Yeah. No, for sure. Like the only reason I didn't greatly consider it, and again, it's just one of those things. Like I don't know how good the positives are or how bad the negatives are for every move. That's going to be a
Right.
thing that I have to kind of figure out for myself. But um, like blocking in the queen and the rook. I mean, like you said, it's not going to be like a completely stationary piece, but it doesn't seem like a setup that's going to be too mobile.
Right.
Like if I get the bishop to d3, it doesn't seem
Hmm.
like I'm gonna have any immediate incentive to get him out of there just for general defense. So, um,
Right. Okay, so let's talk one new concept here. Because you were looking at knight d4. You were considering knight b5 for a little bit. You looked at knight e4 briefly, pawn e4 briefly, stuff like that. And these are all focused around the center, pretty much. You're thinking about ways to get to the center, which is good. That's what we were talking about. At this point, we want to say that we're not shooting in the dark with our ideas. We do have a goal in mind, and that's always going to be the king in the end. We're always going to look to start some kind of checkmating attack and get to that king. The reason in our opening we start with controlling the center is because that's where all the pieces are going to gravitate towards. So if we lose the center at the start of the game, our pieces will not be able to get out into the game anymore. Like these knights that are on their favorite spots, if black's already got pawns down here, they're not coming out anymore. So the only reason we grab the center at the start is to make sure that our pieces can get into the game without trouble at the start of the game. Once we're further into the match and we're kind of in the middling portion of the game and most of our pieces are out and they're happy, then we'll start shifting over to, okay, how am I actually going to win this game? How am I going to get to the king? So one place you can start is you want to think about both players' resources around the enemy king. So a quick rundown would be you have your bishop here that could potentially attack the king. You have your knight that could potentially reach. Your light squared bishop could potentially reach with a few moves. And if you start setting it up, your pawns maybe could just start running up the board and wrecking his king side. For his defenders, he's got the knight helping out, controlling a lot of the squares around the king. He's got this light squared bishop that's being a great defender for his king and controlling a lot of the important squares. So the kind of way you can start developing as a plan is you can say to yourself, if I want to get to that king, eventually I'm going to have to clear out that bishop. I'm going to have to clear out that knight, and I'm going to have to get some kind of meaningful attacking power over there. And usually meaningful attacking power means either your rooks can get involved or your queen can get involved. So one of the good things about bishop d3, for example, is that it's kind of a win-win no matter what happens, because if they take you, you've removed one of those prime defenders of the king, and your queen has a direct line to the enemy king. If they don't take you, say they decline the trade and move away, well, you were still able to activate your bishop, and you've added another attacker into this match. So bishop d3 is one idea that starts getting you primed for some middle game ideas. Knight d4 is also a good move, because this is also kind of eyeing that defender. and getting your knight into a decent attacking position. The only problem with it is that if they don't allow you to do that, say they just move away, this knight's kind of left without purpose a little bit. He doesn't really have any really new good place he can go. He's going to kind of be sitting in here for a while, which usually isn't too bad just sitting in the center. But this guy really is a stationary piece. He's blocking your queen, your rook, and the only way you're going to clear it out is either by going back to where you came from or going to like b5, which we already said doesn't do too much with that
Right.
other knight.
Yeah, we're still
That
we're
guy's
still trying to like yeah, we want control of the center of the board, but only for like position purposes with the goal of like gravitating towards the king, right?
correct. Yeah, and sometimes it's also because we're not sure where the king's going to go. Because the worst thing we could do is like say in our opening we say, all right, let's take control of the king side right away. The guy's just going to castle the other way, and all of that power we used was just wasted. So we kind of start in the center of the board to, for position purposes, get everybody into a nice general spot. And then once the king has committed to one side or the other, then we can start thinking about, okay, that king is there for good. Now we can start putting some power in other areas because the king's just going to leave. If we start building power somewhere in the early game, he'll just go the other way. So we start in the center, keep everything fluid, get everybody into a decent position. And then once that's locked down and the game progresses a little bit, and he's committed over to this side of the board, now we can start thinking about going pretty ape shit. Like there's ideas like just h3 here to prepare g4. You were looking at this g4 move earlier. It only didn't work because there was power there. But we could play like h3, say they like move their knight. We
Ah,
play
yeah.
g4
Okay.
and we just start
Okay.
fucking running at them and getting
Right.
up there. So yeah, once we have the lockdown in the center and we're sure that we're not going to lose a fuck ton of space for our pieces, then we can start going pretty crazy with extremes on the edge of the board. We just want to make sure everything is solid enough that our pieces can get into the match and we're not just going to get run over. And then once we're secure with everybody, then we can start focusing on really attacking. So yeah, if it was me here, my main ideas would be I would definitely look at h3 with the idea of playing g4 and grabbing a ton of space and bothering these two defenders of the king. Also, pushing these pawns forward so that, let's say I get my other rook to g1 eventually. I'm looking for something in the end like something like this, where I've shifted kind of all my power over to the king side, and I'm just going to death march on this guy because he doesn't have enough defenders to handle something like this. Other ideas would be I could try to trade those defenders from the king. So say like knight h4 makes some sense. Usually your knight doesn't want to be on the edge of the board like this, but our purpose here is we're just going to try and trade him for that bishop.
Right.
And the
Right.
bishop doesn't have too many squares it can go to avoid something like this. We'll be able to kind of grab it wherever it goes, except for like here. But if it comes into here, we can just start fucking with it with pawns and grab a bunch of space that way. And eventually he'll end up in the back anyway. Same idea with like bishop d3. We can exchange one of the main defenders of the king. I kind of like trading the knight more because we might actually want to use this bishop for our attack. He's got a nice kind of line to the king. But bishop d3 is also fine because the queen can do that job later anyway. The main idea is just that we're looking for ways to start building an attack, and we're looking for a way to get some major power over there. So the h3 idea, the major power we're going to bring are these two rooks, and these are going to be the stars of our attack. We'll open up some lines, and then these rooks will take over. The other one with bishop d3 or knight h4, the queen will probably be the main player in the attack, and we'll get her on a line to the enemy king. So we'll just kind of remove the defenders, get some kind of major power over there, and then we'll start trying to just blow open the king side. And this will just immediately put a timer on black, because if they do nothing while we're doing all of this stuff, they're just going to lose. So you can expect black on the other side to try to do the same thing to you. We're going to be marching up the king side. He's going to be marching up the queen side and trying to do the same thing to your king. So you just kind of keep a balance in your head of watching what they're doing, feeling out how much time do I have to make this work. And if you think you have enough, then we can just start going for it. If not, then we'll do it in a more measured way. We'll be a little slower, like bishop d3, or trade some pieces, keep everything solid. But if you think you can just go for the most nuclear option, then that's always the most fun. So do whatever you think is good here. I think any of those moves are solid enough, and we'll see how the game plays out.
Yeah, like pawn to g4.
Well, the only reason you can't do it right away is because it'll just get taken. You would have to support it
Oh,
with
right.
your
Yeah,
knight
yeah.
first.
Sorry. Yeah. Brain fart. Yeah, like pawn to h3,
Yeah.
right? And then
All right. So if you played h3, I would obviously see what you're going for. If black's paying
so
attention when you
okay,
play something
so
like
you
that,
would go another route.
probably I'd probably play this with the intention of trying to shut you down a little bit.
No, sorry, I meant like as white.
Oh, as white. No, I don't mind h3 at all. I might play h3. Bishop d3 makes sense. I like h3 personally. I like taking the aggressive route most of the time. I'd probably play h3 here.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. It's gonna be a bit more creative, maybe. So
Sure. I mean, just seeing the way this game plays out, also, and trying to attack is good. You'll get a
right.
feel for it more. All right. So my thought process here, I'll voice it out loud. As soon as I see h3, I know what you're going for because the only reason somebody would play that move is to try to prepare g4. So immediately my brain starts going to, is g4 a problem? And the answer is definitely yes. If I start letting your pawn rampage through, it's going to be an issue for me.
Right.
So then my second step would be, Josh is going for g4. What are my options to handle it? I would consider moves like h5 with the idea if you play g4, I'll just take you out. But I'm not super in love with that either because one of the ways it could play out is you play g4, I take you, you take back. But the problem is I gave you this massive open h file for your rook, and I'm not super in love with giving you something that easily because that just lets one of your major pieces in the attack right away. So I would think h5 is an option, but it's a little risky. Then I would shift to thinking, what are my other options to deal with g4? And I would notice that the second you play g4, your knight on f3 will become unprotected. So I would start calculating something like g4, bishop goes to e4 and starts trying to pressure some of those unprotected pieces. Maybe you take me, and I take back, stuff like that. In the end, though, I think I'm just going to play h6. And the idea of this is just that I'm not letting you get too far in the position. If you go too far, I'll be able to stop you eventually. I'm also creating some escape squares for my bishop if it ends up needing it later. So I'm going to do this to kind of indirectly answer your idea here.
Okay. White to move.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just follow through with the game plan, right?
Sure. Yeah,
And
since I didn't like directly stop you, there's not really any big problem with doing this. You would just want to ask yourself before you do it, is there any major negative? We talked about the knight being unprotected. So before you play g4, you do want to ask yourself, if I play g4 and he comes and attacks my knight, am I prepared to deal with that?
right,
Can you handle that at all?
I see. I see. Okay, let me think.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah. Well, oh, no, I'm misreading the board. Does seem like kind of an issue. We have a queen in the vicinity, but doesn't seem doesn't seem like I'd be able to like directly counter that.
I can put it on the board for you. So let's say you play
Yeah.
g4, I play here. So you have this issue where your knight is unprotected, so you got to do something about that. And you're in what's called a pin here. A pin is when somebody can't move because someone behind him will get in trouble. So if we try to just move our knight out of the attack here, the rook will come under fire instead.
Right.
So when you have a piece that's pinned and you're not going to be able to move it, you have to go to some kind of other defense. If you can't move it, you can bring somebody else to protect him. Like you said, you have a queen in the vicinity, you have a bishop in the vicinity that might be
Yeah.
able to lend him some support,
I mean,
or you can just take him out. That would also be an option.
yeah, like I mean, bishop to g2 maybe.
Yeah, bishop g2 definitely is a defense.
Yeah.
There's also bishop e2. So
Oh, yeah.
we would find all of our options here. So like bishop g2, bishop e2, queen e2, or take the bishop. And then we would kind of weigh those four options with what our game plan is and pick the one that makes the most sense. So I'll say I would throw out bishop g2 because it kind of contradicts our game plan. Do you know why?
Well, I mean, I thought, kind of one pillar of our game plan here was having like opening up a bit more the H column for the rook.
Right. Yeah, you've got it. The idea here was that we want to open up those two rooks, right? We want to get a rook to g1 eventually. So this bishop sitting on g2
Oh, oh,
is going to get in the way of it.
yeah, that like the other rook totally slipped my mind. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, we just want to leave these two files open for our attack. So if we were going to use a bishop defense, bishop e2 would make more sense. You also have the option of doing like queen e2 instead. Do you think there's any merit to using the queen instead of the bishop or not really?
Well, I mean, I guess that kind of depends on how useful our bishop is in another position, and I think we kind of determined that it's not that useful, like on the right side of the board.
Correct. Yep.
So yeah, I mean, I guess just opening up a path for the rook at d1, just by moving the bishop seems best.
Perfect. Yep, you're right. Bishop e2 is definitely the best move. Get the rook ready to go to g1. And our queen stays in an okay spot. She's already got kind of a good line. We don't have to put her here because it would block in our bishop pretty badly, which in
Yeah,
turn blocks our
and
rook.
the queen just seems much more powerful in D than E.
Yeah, it is. The D file is a bit more open than the E file. There's not really much going on the E file at all. So you're right. Okay, so then going all the way back, we would say in our head, play g4 and he comes and attacks my knight. Is it a problem? And then we would answer no, because we calculated we can just play bishop e2, which accelerates our plan and defends the threat at the same time. So g4 is fine to play. So for me now, I have to decide, is this bishop e4 move even worth playing for me? Because I know you're just going to defend it. Or should I just go somewhere else and just retreat? I think it's still worth playing for me because it is going to at least keep this pin and be annoying for your knight. So I'll play it anyway.
Yeah.
You want to play bishop e2, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, let's go there. And I will play knight c6 and just start getting this last piece into the game. All right, now you're in new territory. You have a pretty good head start on me because your pawns have already moved up the board a bit, whereas mine haven't started my attack at all. So you've got choices between playing like... Yeah, actually, I'll let you find them. You can do this. You know the game plan, so what kind of moves make sense for you to play right now? Try to come up with like...
Yeah, I mean, like rook to g1 seems reasonable, although the it um feels like you have enough pieces like gravitating towards the middle of the board that I'd want. I don't well, hmm. I mean, like, mm, okay, this is an interesting one. What about like knight to e5?
Knight to e5. Well, you have to remember that your knight's immobile right now just because of that pin, right? If you play knight e5, I'll
Oh
likely
yeah,
just take your rook.
yeah, totally. Yeah, no, definitely don't want to do that.
Yeah. So this is kind of those like things that don't belong to you.
Yeah,
Again, with
I'm just
time, you'll
kind of
kind of just remember.
yeah, just trying to like think outside the box a little bit. So what do you think? Okay, so when I see this knight to c6, what should
Mhm.
be the first thing I think about?
So whenever your opponent makes any move ever, unless it's on like the first turn of the game, like you don't have to do this when they just move their pawn at the start, but any move that your opponent makes, the first thing is identify whether they're planning anything that you need to be worried about. So when knight c6 comes out, you kind of want to take a quick look at the things that it accomplishes. When it comes out, I have some new moves that I can consider playing. E5 is a move that I could try now that the knight is supporting it. D4 is a move I could try now that the knight is supporting it. Or I could even try something like knight b4 with the idea of getting into your king with my bishop's help. So you want to take a quick look at anything that you think could be an issue with my new move and calculate them briefly. So if I play, let's say I play e5. So for example, for your move, let's say white played rook g1 here and just continued with their plan. Uh, if black plays e5, is this a big problem for you?
Knight to where?
So say after knight c6, let's say you just continued your plan, like played rook g1 and continued on the attack. These new moves that I got, you want to think if I play rook g1, will any of these be an issue? So if you play rook g1 and I play something like e5, this is a move that I gained from getting that knight involved there. Is this an issue for you?
S- Uh, um, is my voice coming through on your end?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, okay. Okay, let's. Well, mm, so like black. So you're saying uh, pawn to e5, white to move?
Yeah, so basically what I'm saying here is after knight c6, you want to think about new opportunities that black gets now that they didn't have before. Like if I tried to play e5 before, you would just take it. No
Right,
questions
right.
asked.
So
But
like
once the knight's
the
here, now
yeah. I
it's
mean
more
the obvious one being pawn takes bishop,
right. So you would
and
calculate
then
this a bit
yeah.
and think if
So
it's really bad.
yeah. What's that?
You would have to calculate this a bit because you'd have to move your bishop and you'd have to think, is it a disaster if I'm forced backwards at all with my bishop?
Definitely seems so.
It's
Blocking rooks, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit annoying.
Yeah.
Maybe not the end of the world if you like put them on G2, for example. You block the H file, but your main one is still open at least. You can still use the G file with like G5 and continuing that way. But yeah, it is definitely a little annoying if your bishop had to go to the corner and your rook gets blocked. A little bit of an issue. Okay, so we know it's not great. We could live with it, but not ideal. So then do you see any way to stop E5? Reasonable ideas to prevent it? Because that might be coming next turn if we don't do something.
Right. I mean, that doesn't. No. Um. Mm. Uh. That. I mean, what about like bishop to d3?
What's the idea with that one?
I don't have a great idea, but it's
That's
yeah. I mean, it's just I mean, this bishop at e4 seems to be in like a pretty tactical spot. So
right.
like trading for that piece seems okay.
It would be. Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. You have to remember though, you've already assigned this bishop a job. You remember what he's doing? We moved him here for a purpose. He's sitting on e2 doing something.
Oh, it's slip. All I remember about that move is that we were trying to unblock a rook.
That was part of it.
Okay.
We also went here to defend the knight though. That got under attack before.
Right. Okay. Oh, yeah. Didn't even. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
if we play bishop d3, we're
Similar
letting go of that.
issue.
Yeah, so we can't do that quite yet. The idea of trading that piece is good fundamentally though, because that is Black's strongest piece right now. He's being very annoying. You do have the option of just taking him out right away with your knight.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. That was the next thing. It just seemed like, um, the it just well. Okay. Maybe I'm talking myself into it, but like trading this knight seems very worthwhile to us.
mm-hmm. It
So
definitely would be. This knight's doing nothing for us pretty much, whereas that bishop's doing everything for them.
yeah, exactly.
So in theory, it would be a good trade. The only problem is if we take, which piece do you think they're going to take back with? The pawn or the knight who's coming in here?
Yeah, they're gonna give up the pawn.
Well, they wouldn't be giving
Right?
anything up because whichever piece stands there would be safe. He wouldn't get taken back. So they can bring either one. It's just which one they think would be stronger there. And that would
Ah,
probably be the
yeah.
knight. They'd probably,
I see the direct issue now. Okay.
uh,
Yeah, because that knight's also in a very advantageous position.
yeah, exactly. So we basically got rid of one problem, but we replaced it with one that's arguably even worse because he's attacking our queen. He's also attacking this weak pawn, and then he'd be attacking both rooks if he gets in there. So we'd be forced to play something like Queen E1 just to hold that. And this is
That
kind
yeah,
of
and
shitty.
that just like ruins the whole game plan.
Yeah, so this looks good on the surface, but if you calculate it far enough, we'll realize, oh shit, we're gonna get kind of screwed over if we take that bishop.
I see.
I don't want to take you too deep into this stuff because we're getting kind of advanced here.
Yeah,
The main thing I
we've
want
also
you,
been going for a while, so
yeah, we can wrap this up soon. I'd say the main thing is just when somebody makes a move, you just want to think about what new opportunities did they gain, and you kind of want to surface level prepare for them. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just have to think to yourself, if there's any earth-shattering threat, I should probably deal with that. This E5 move is not like a huge issue, so it's whatever. We don't have to do anything to deal with it. In this position, all the moves you were thinking about are still fine. Rook G1 is still very reasonable. G5 right away is pretty reasonable, just starting the attack right away. What else? Yeah, probably one of those two. Just start your attack. Black does have some annoying moves, like the E5 move we were looking at and the knight's hopping in, but we can't really do anything about it. So the best thing you can do is just continue your plan and start firing. So your choices here are pretty much just Rook G1 or G5. Which one you like better? We can go a few more moves.
yeah, like rook to g5, I guess.
Sure. All right, so you go G5,
Or
attacking my
oh,
knight.
sorry, not sorry, no, the rook to g1.
Rook G1.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, sorry.
that's fine. All right, we'll play Rook G1. Um, I'll go ahead and play E5. Hit your bishop.
Yeah. Um okay, maybe well, okay. So you could make an argument for like pushing up a rook. What do you think about blocking off that backwards path for that bishop at f4?
With Rook G3.
Yeah.
Um, well, the thing is, right now you've got 3 points under fire. If we don't do something for that bishop, we lose 3 points. So if you're going to sacrifice that guy, we would have to have a really good reason. And I don't think Rook G3 does enough of an immediate thing that it's worth giving
Oh,
up a bishop for that.
oh,
Because
I guess I didn't take that into account because I
it's
just
kind of
saw
stuck there.
the, well, I saw the pawn at e3 and thought that would, oh,
That's true. He is defended. The problem is a small
yeah,
piece is about
yeah,
ready to
no,
blow
yeah,
up.
I just misread. Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, so
Um,
here you kind of have to do something about the bishop. So we either have to move to one of our safe squares or try and find some other counterattack we can do that's strong enough that he won't want to take our bishop anymore. Like maybe g5 is possible with the idea if you take the bishop, I'll take the knight, something like that.
okay, okay,
But yeah, I'm not sure here. Best move is probably just to run, honestly.
okay, okay. Um, yeah, how viable is pawn to g5?
Definitely viable. It's one of those moves that this is one of the moves you have to make very sure it's good before you play it because you don't want to sacrifice pieces without calculating it. So the line you would have to think about is if I play g5, first of all, you calculate the direct line, like if he takes and I take, what happens? So say he takes the bishop, gains 3 points.
Uh-huh.
You take the knight, get your 3 points back, everything's even. He'll probably come out and take with the queen to make sure this doesn't get any further. So he'll go up by 1 point now from grabbing this pawn.
Right.
And then at the end, we have a few pawns we could take to get our point back. We could take this f4 pawn because our queen would be backing it up. The only issue with that is it would open up the bishop to grab that. So that could be a little annoying. Or we could go ahead and take this pawn in the center, 2 attackers versus 1 defender, and that could be fine. So g5 is viable if they do that trade. The points would stay even, and we'd get our open rook. The problem is we would lose some of our attacking power because we traded some pieces away. He was able to get his queen out and start defending. So it would be okay, it looks like, if that happened. Not great, but okay. And then the other thing you would have to calculate is what if he doesn't just walk into what we want and does something else, like if he moves his knight, for example. Now it's a little awkward because our bishop's under attack again and we lost our counter threat. So now we'd probably have to move away. And that doesn't look horrible. I mean, that's also fine because at least we got to move the pawn forward and keep attacking. G5 is definitely viable, though. If you want to go for it, you can. Looks fine. Moves don't have to be perfect here. I'm mostly just trying to get you into the idea of something happened. I have to react. What are my choices? Look at a few different choices and then pick the one you like the best. So if
Right,
G5 is what
right.
you like best, go for it. Doesn't have to
Yeah,
be perfect.
yeah, yeah, yeah. This is so let's go ahead and we can call it a day here, but I think this is like when I do poker coaching with guys that, you know, are much newer. It's poker's so hard for, well, a variety of reasons. It's, you know, it's a game of imperfect information and run out randomness and all those sorts of things.
Right.
So you have to like you have to go through all these different thought processes, except there's just, you know, a million exceptions to every rule.
Right.
I mean, obviously the same thing happens in chess. Like
Mm-hmm.
you use some slightly different opening tactics. So like, you know, towards the middle of the game, it's like just because there's some maneuver your opponent took that you're familiar with, it's always going to be somewhat unique.
Right.
Um, but no, just like guiding newer players through these different thought processes and like trying to, I mean, really how you get good at these strategy games is like figuring out what's important and what isn't. Um,
Right.
which is, you know, what makes games like you know, chess and poker so difficult is because like there's just so many, well, poker especially, just because like there's so many spots where there's two obvious pros and cons to whatever you're about to do,
Hmm.
and you just have no idea how to rank those. So,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
so
Well, I feel for you with the chess because I know that's how it is for me with poker, where it's like I've heard very strong poker players lay out some like fundamental rules for me to follow, like the same ones I've given you for chess. But it's also like, yeah, I know the fundamental rules, but when do they not apply anymore? Where are the exceptions? Do I have to follow these all the time? If something's under attack, do I give
yeah,
them up? It's just a lot of
it's
different
yeah,
building.
it's also why I preach studying with solvers so much, because we're trying to like learning poker is just so non-linear.
Right,
um because you're like, for instance, pre-flop is the first street, but you can make massive mistakes in every river spot, but
right,
you have no idea how to get to the river until you study pre-flop. So it's just
right.
this huge mess. And but the reason I preach solver so much is because we're just trying to like develop your intuition of the whole game tree.
Right.
And that's just going to improve you so much more drastically and quickly than trying to like nail a spot. Like, um, yeah, like learning the only reason we're trying to get good at pre-flop is so that we have a better understanding of post-flop. Um,
Yeah, exact same thing for chess.
yeah,
Very
exactly.
similar. That's a good thing to leave you with, though, because there is the chess solver, and it's a more well, it is a perfect solver. I mean, with poker, it's like you have to put the right inputs to get the right outputs. The chess computer, though, is just perfect. It's always going to give you
Yeah,
the best.
there's no pre-flop ranges. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no uncertainty in chess, so it can always give you the perfect answer. But this website was chess.com. They have a lot of good resources on here, so I would definitely make an account. When you play a game online against somebody, immediately after the game, there's literally a button called Game Review that you can just go into, and you can go through the game, and the computer will tell you exactly where you fucked up and what the best move was. And it's very similar to the poker solver, where it's going to tell you the best move, and it's up to you to figure out why does it like this move so much, why did it pick this combo, what about the opponent's strategy is going to make me want to do this or that. So it's very similar to like working with the poker solvers, but there is a perfect solver for chess that is 100% the way to get better. So if you ever play any games, just make sure to analyze them after or bring them to me and we can analyze them together with the computer, but
Yeah,
that'll make
yeah.
you better at chess so fast.
Yeah, I have a game against a bot pulled up on chess.com.
That's good. Those work too. Oh, yeah. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it'll always tell you, I don't know if it'll tell you during the game, but after the game, it'll always definitely tell you what the best continuation was. It won't tell you why, the same way a poker solver won't, but usually it's pretty easy to intuition it out.
Right. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, thanks for the session.
Yeah, no problem. If you play any games, send them over to me and I can give you input or we can look at them next time.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, nice.
All right. Any questions before we go?
I think that's it, man. I appreciate the help.
All right, cool. No worries. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, for sure. Talk to you later.
See you.
Um Oof. Oof. Oh. Oh no. This doesn't look good. Damn. Fuck. Fuck. Oh boy. This is not good. Really? Fuck! Shit. Ugh. Tits. How am I up right now? A missed win, huh? Um... King can move. Oh, that's checkmate, right? Oh. Oh, right. Oh, God, I keep forgetting the king can move. Mate in 1. Here? Okay. What? What? Mate in 4. Okay, so here. BF3 is a missed win. Mate in 4. Uh, 1, 2. Yeah. Yeah. Here? Mate in 1? How? There? Oh. Yeah, got him. Fuck. God damn it, this game's hard. the sun.